Hello and welcome to another edition of Dinner Tonight. Tonight I'm going to make firecracker pork with fruity lime salsa. It's essentially pork tacos with a salsa made of kiwi and mango and pineapple. And this is a dish that you cook in the slow cooker. It comes out of our well-used edition of Cooking Light Slow Cooker Cookbook. As you can see, this is a really well-used, well-loved recipe book. So the first thing that this calls for is 5 pounds of pork butt, which I've got here. This has got a bone in. You can do bone in, bone out. I ordered online, as everybody it's best to do now. So you kind of take what they give you. So the first thing that you want to do is you make this rub for it that has salt, paprika, thyme, and black pepper and garlic. And so as you can see, I've already mixed some up there. It's all mixed in. And you're just going to rub this all over your piece of meat. And one of the first things you always want to do whenever you're working with meat is make sure you pat it dry all the way around with paper towels. And I've already done that. And so the easiest way to do this, because it is going to make a mess, because I do it with my hands, is I'm going to just put it in the crock pot. So you're not really going to be able to see what I'm doing, but I just pour this on top and then just start massaging it all around so you can lift it up and move it around in there, and that way all the chunks actually just stay in there and they'll all become part of the juice that comes from slow cooking this for about 4 or 5 hours. And it'll get a nice orange hue to it and give it lots of flavor. So here's what it's kind of looking like now. So looks pretty good. It's all well massaged. I've got the fat on the top here, and I'm going to put that facing up with the meat side facing down so that all the drippings will go down and drip over the meat. The next thing that we do, let me rinse my hands here really quick. So the next step is you puree up some water, some onion, and some chipotle peppers in adobo sauce. So the recipe calls for 1 whole can of this. As you can see, I've used just a little bit of it. The first time I ever made this, I used the whole can, and it was so spicy, it was virtually inedible. So I use 3 of the little chili peppers in there and make sure I get plenty of the sauce. Okay, and so all this is going to go into a food processor. Those go in. Got my 1 whole onion, diced pretty coarsely. You just have to cut it into quarters because the food processor does the rest. And then it calls for 3/4 of a cup of water. And you're just going to pulse that until it's really pretty fine. Okay, so if you don't have a good food processor, I really recommend it. This is one we got for Elise, mostly because she likes to make a lot of smoothies. So that's what it kind of looks like on the inside there. And then you're just going to pour this on top of your meat. Okay. And that's all there is to preparing the meat. So I'm going to stick this in the slow cooker. It'll slow cook for, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 hours. In the meantime, I'll be making the fruity lime salsa, and I'll show you how I make that. So we'll be back when we're ready to make the salsa. All right, so we are back several hours later, and after a little happy hour with the family via Skype. And so the roast has come out of the slow cooker, and I've let it rest for about 10 minutes. And so here's what it looks like. So this is a bone in that kind of makes it a little bit harder to shred, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut off a big hunk of this off the bone if I can, and just shred part of it at a time. So that's kind of what it looks like there on the inside. Could be, it's right down next to the bone. So, and then usually, I'm going to take a couple of forks to shred this. This doesn't look like this is going to be quite fall off the bone sort of stuff, but yeah, it's shredding pretty good. So I'm going to shred up most of this. Then I'm going to put it back in all the juices that were accumulated in the slow cooker. So we'll be back as soon as this gets all shredded up. Okay, so I've got the pork butt in the slow cooker, and it's been going for about 30-45 minutes. And I'm going to show you how to just throw together the fruity lime salsa. This is really easy. Basically what I've got here is 3 kiwis, pretty well diced up. I've got 2 mangoes, really well diced up. I've got the juice of 1 lime, plus 1 can of crushed pineapple. It's 8 ounces drained. I got a 1/3 cup of red onion, and then I'm going to throw in some cilantro at the end. And basically, you just throw all the stuff in the bowl, mix it together, let it sit there and in the refrigerator for 2 to 3 hours so that everything gets to know one another and just has a really nice flavor in the end. So I'm just going to put all this in here. By the way, I just want to point out that the first half of this video I had to do without my cameraman, Simon, and I made a real big boomer mistake, and I videotaped it, or I taped it in portrait instead of landscape. So now you see we're in landscape now that Simon is here to point it out. My daughter, Elise, did say she'd noticed that I was doing that, but wasn't going to, correct me on it. So, there you go, for whatever that's worth. Anyway, so this is really easy. I mean, I dice everything up. This sort of makes a pico de gallo-ish kind of salsa. The other thing you could do is also just throw this all into the blender and puree it if you want a more, saucy salsa. So if you never really, cutting up cilantro sometimes can be a big pain in the neck, but I usually just leave it all in the rubber band, and I just scrunch it all up there. And then you can just slice it all off there. Okay. And then just give it a few more little chops with a knife just to make it up nice and small. Throw it in there. Again, if you're not a big fan of cilantro, you could either skip it or just throw in some parsley. Juice of 1 lime rather. So the mangoes that I used were pretty big mangoes, fairly ripe. And the kiwis were not as ripe as I would have liked, but this is really just nice salsa. We don't usually use all of this when we make our tacos with this, and so this sits around the house for a few days and just becomes part of snacking with chips. So that's all there is to the salsa. So when the pork is done, we'll come back and we'll start shredding it, and then we'll put together a taco for you. Okay, so I've got it all shredded. I've got it back in the crock pot. So I left the crock pot while I was shredding it. I left it on warm so that the juices would stay warm, and then I just throw everything back in there, and then it stays pretty warm. So I'm gonna heat up a tortilla for a taco. This takes just a few seconds on each side. Anyway, this is a family favorite. We got enough here to get us probably 2 or 3 meals out of this. It's also good for serving a big crowd. We've done that before. And so the roast that I used was about 5 pounds and had the bone in. So, all right, this looks pretty done. I like it with a few little bubbles come up on there. So a little bit of that. Then you don't want to get a whole lot of the juice because the juice is pretty spicy, so depending on how you like it. Plus it all just runs out, so it makes a big mess. But you can just put a little bit in there in the middle. Get a little bit of the salsa. There you go. Let's see. So the salsa, the sweetness of the fruit and all that kind of cuts the spice of the pork. Oh man, combination of the
pork and the salsa was perfect. So that's dinner tonight.